Okay, as we continue our series of retro reviews, we have Mudd's Women from the original series of Star Trek coming up next. Out there, I'm the oldest nerd, and Mudd's Women is another one of these that has kind of a sexist view of women, but there are a couple of interesting things in this episode that go beyond the sexist elements of miners wanting beautiful women to be their brides in the middle of sandstorms and things such as that, and says something about people being happy with what they are rather than having to enhance themselves. Kind of a minor message in that. But a few things that we find that happened for the first time in this episode, for instance, extending the deflector shields. This was as Mudd's craft is trying to get away from them. They go into an asteroid field, and to prevent it from breaking up in the asteroid field, they extend their shields around Mudd's ship. This is the first time that was done in Star Trek. Also, in doing so, they depleted 3 lithium crystals. That is to say, before they came up with the idea of dilithium, they called them lithium crystals. And there were 6 of them, and they lost them all but one, and it was going fast, and then they went on batteries, and so the tension in the episode was a decaying orbit that they wouldn't be able to blast out of unless they were able to replace their dilithium, or rather lithium. We notice also they weren't sure of Spock's origin, and Mudd calls him part Vulcanian. Just by looking at him, you could see that he wasn't a pure-blood Vulcanian. We find Uhura is wearing a green uniform, or what in the reruns would look like a yellow uniform, the same as the captain and most of the bridge crew. And it wouldn't be until other episodes that she would be wearing red with the Engineering and Other Services division. Mudd himself is kind of a space pirate, and this is something that Gene Roddenberry had said that there never would be in Star Trek. They would not do space pirate shows, and yet in the first season they do a space pirate in Harry Mudd. If he's indeed a pirate, he's more of a con man, a smuggler, someone who has had ins and outs with legal authorities. Later on, Cyrano Jones had the same kind of thing. Anyway, Roger C. Carmel, who played Harry Mudd, was one of the most popular characters in Star Trek, despite only appearing in 2 episodes. Spock seems to be amused by the reaction that most of the crew have to Mudd's women. Kind of an interesting thing there. They had not completely cemented Spock's overly logical character. Certainly not so much that he would not show a little bit in his face of what he was thinking. First time we've had dealing with Rigel 12. In this particular case, Rigel 12 has a major lithium mine in it, and they have a crewman, the navigator, whose name is Farrell. I don't know if we've seen him before or since. On the ship, a funny little line where one of Mudd's women says, "Are you going to give me an examination?" And McCoy says, "No, I wouldn't trust my judgment." Also showed drugs in this. This was something else that was supposedly in Roddenberry's no-no list of showing any kind of drug use. Of course, this was not by Starfleet personnel. This is by people who were outside of Starfleet, so I suppose that qualified there. They also make some mention of payment to the miners for the lithium crystals. This is once... They've never been consistent as to whether the Federation uses money or not. Certainly some kind of payment could be made, not like Mudd was putting forth. So there is some kind of currency that they have. In later Trek episodes, they mention credits, and this is also another thing that kind of goes against the moneyless society that they've mentioned in at least a couple of the movies, and probably in more places. A card game called Double Jack, used with round playing cards. You used to be able to buy these circular playing cards during the 60s and 70s. There were interesting little things like that. For instance, there were you could buy a round slide rule, you could buy round playing cards. It was just something to be different, and interesting little prop that they used on this. Personification of the ideal woman of being selfish, vain, and useless also speaks to the sexism of the era. All in all, we love the character of Harry Mudd. I'm a little embarrassed for the crew of the Enterprise, who seems to be even under the effect of a alien drug, certainly just a little too gaga over these women, and the women expecting to be treated like they are objects and possessions rather than people. This is something that the 23rd century should have already abolished, and certainly in the female crew members that was the case. So that's where we are in that episode of Mudd's Women. Certainly it was done to kind of keep up with the style in television at that time, where the leading man was always the romancer, and all the women were, dressed in slinky, sequiny gowns and things like this, with the appropriate grinder music that they put on that. It's something that doesn't age well right now, but otherwise the show is pretty well done. This is before Kirk became such an amorous individual himself. He was so married to his ship, and that, in the words of Harry Mudd, he's married to a ship, you're not going to be able to distract him. And sure enough, they pretty much weren't. This is a situation before they've decided that every week Kirk had to have a new girlfriend, and they did not have that this time. He was still the stern ship's captain. So an interesting episode, not one that I would want to watch over and over, except for the performance of Roger C. Carmel, who plays Harry Mudd to the hilt. It's good on that level, and we see a little more of character development, especially in Spock. We see a little bit more on McCoy, and so it's worth it for that. And so that's Mudd's Women, our retro review of this week. Next week, What Are Little Girls Made Of? And while that sounds like it is something equally sexist, actually, this is the one where we discover Nurse Chapel's long-lost husband, and the first time that androids will be mentioned in Star Trek. That's coming up in next week's review. Until then, please subscribe to the channel, and let us know what you think of this episode down in the comments below. And until next time, don't go far.